Welcome to the Sponsored Rider Club podcast, your guide to motorsports sponsorship. Here's your host, Josh Weesey.
Welcome to episode 52 of the Sponsored Rider Club podcast, which is powered by ImpactFuel.org. My name is Josh Weesey, and I'm your host, and I'm here to guide you through this wild world of motorsports sponsorship. To help me with that today, I have our featured guest on, which is top alcohol NHRA racer Megan Meyer. And Megan's the first NHRA racer we've ever had on this show. Now, before we get into structure and the interview with Megan, I have a few things to cover. First off, I would love for you to go on to iTunes and leave a rating or review. That would be phenomenal. One thing I've been doing in past episodes is sharing reviews that I've seen on iTunes. And one of them comes from our friends at Bold Racing, one of the best sources to learn how to attract sponsors. The top racers that come on and share how they have done it has taught us a lot. Keep up the good work. So I appreciate that 5-star rating and for them to go on and leave their feedback. I'm not going to tell you what feedback you should leave, but I would love it if you would go on there and do so. And while you're there, or whatever podcast player you are on, go ahead and subscribe so that you don't miss any of our upcoming shows. Specifically, our next ones are Tucker Mertz and Kirk Zach of HMK. So they're coming on together to give you a glimpse of a sponsor and rider relationship. Following them is going to be GNCC ATV champion Walker Fowler. And then we're going to have Ron Patton of Stud Boy Traction come on. If you ever want to get insider access to our upcoming guests and also, just a forum for riders and racers to share best practices, go ahead and check out the Sponsored Rider Club on Facebook and request to join. If you have questions or specific guest recommendations, go ahead and shoot me an email, podcast@impactfuel.org. This episode is sponsored by 4 awesome companies. Solderweld is one of them. They produce game-changing metal bonding technology products. Another is TopThePodium.com. They're experts in motorsports sponsorship. Then we have Bold Racing and Suspension. They're a family race team and custom suspension experts. And then we have Neverlift Racing Company. Specifically, they're owning the Armor Coat product line, and Coat is spelled K-O-T-E. And those products help make the racer's life easier. And if you don't already have this discount code, go ahead and use ARMOR10 at armorcoatproducts.com. You'll hear more about all 4 of those companies just before we get into Heat 2. We're going to hop into the structure of the podcast. We'll begin with the qualifier, which is a basic intro. In Heat 1, we'll dive into Megan's background. In Heat 2, we'll talk about her sponsorship tactics and strategy suggestions. Then in the main event, we'll discuss mindset, and we'll end at the finish line where we'll get closing comments, and we'll find out how to get a hold of Megan. Without further ado, let's get this thing started. Welcome, everybody, to this episode of the Sponsored Rider Club podcast. Today, I'm joined by our featured guest, Megan Meyer. So, Megan, if you would do us a favor, give us a quick intro.
Oh, well, thank you very much for having me on, Josh. I'm excited to be your first drag racer on the show, and your first driver from NHRA. So I guess I'll just give a brief introduction to kind of the NHRA since many of your followers might not know about it. But so I got started racing when I was 10 years old back in 2004. And my sister and I, she's 2 years younger than me, we both got started at the same time, and we got into it because our dad drag raced, and he got started in 1979. So we just grew up at the racetrack, and he first started doing AHRA, and then from there he transitioned into IHRA, and then into NHRA. So he's raced in a lot of different series, but they're all just based on drag racing, and he's had different cars. He's had a front engine dragster, a top fuel dragster, and now we run top alcohol dragsters. And so kind of the main difference between a top alcohol dragster and a top fuel dragster is the motor and clutch control. So, and actually in the top alcohol dragster class, there's 3 different engine combinations that you can do, whereas in top fuel, it's all exactly the same. So they have the clutch control, they have the supercharger, they run on nitro, and they just have more power than what we do. Whereas in my class, were a little bit slower. So they run about 330 miles per hour. And for them, that's just a little under 4 seconds, but they only go to 1,000 foot. And it used to be a quarter mile, but they changed it for the top fuel class, just as a big safety concern.
Yeah.
But, they're kind of at that point where they're, having engine explosions and stuff at the end. So I don't know if that would change anytime soon. I haven't heard anything about it, but they're kind of at that point to where they were a few years ago when they changed it from a quarter mile to 1,000 foot. But so my class, we still run the full quarter mile, and we go about 280 miles per hour, which is just a little over 5 seconds. And so kind of the different combinations in our class is you can run an injected car, and you can run nitromethane as your fuel. You can have a blower car and run alcohol as your fuel, or you can have a centrifugal clutch, a converter clutch, and run a blower and alcohol. And so for us, we run the centrifugal clutch with the nitro injected motor. Mm-hmm. And there's really, they kind of change the rules around so where one's doesn't have more power than the other. It's kind of fair if you go across the board, but it depends on what region you're in and depends on the track and the weather conditions. So, kind of if it's hotter out and the track gets greasy, and it's hard to make power, the blower guys can kind of change their gear ratio so they can shift later on, or just so they can kind of get down the track faster. Whereas us, we can't really change anything like that. And so we're just kind of stuck with the conditions that we have. But if you go somewhere like down south where in the beginning of the year, we have cooler weather, we're closer to sea level. And so with that, we're able to make more power, whereas the blower guys can't. So it's kind of even. And like I said, they've changed the rules. We used to run 100% nitromethane. A few years ago, they changed it down, lowered us all the way down to 95% nitro. So we run 5% alcohol with that. And that's just because the nitro cars in our class were just making more power and they were beating everybody. So they changed that to kind of make it more fair. So it's very cool that our class is diversified like that. They also have top alcohol funny cars that they're pretty much, they just do the two types of engine combinations. They both have blowers and alcohol, but it's just the clutch is different on theirs. And so it's cool because I love how different our sport is. And it's in NHRA, there's over 20 different classes that you can compete in, from a muscle car, which is what we call a door car, all the way up to top field dragster and motorcycles. And they have snowmobiles. And so there's just a little bit of everything for everybody.
Oh, that's really cool. And that was really helpful for me too, because I've watched NHRA and I've been to some tracks, and I don't know, it's just a bunch of cool cars going really fast and that are really loud, and I've never really fully understood it all. That was a great intro. And there's a couple things that I actually want to pull out of that. One is the speed, like 280 mile an hour. I can't even comprehend that. I mean, like I've gone 140 in a car before, and that was I thought that was crazy. I was like, I'm the fastest human alive, and it's just like I can't even comprehend it. 280, and you're saying not even like the top class, right? So that's it's just incredible. I don't even think that, especially in 5 seconds, it's just nuts. And then the other thing is, you were talking about the conditions of the track, and I'm always fascinated hearing different people talk about how the conditions of whatever their track is impacts performance. Like, you gave off things about the heat and like the stickiness of the track, and I've heard people on here talk about like the dirt type and how much clay is in it, and I've interviewed a jet ski person that was like, oh yeah, if it's a little windy, it gets choppier, and then you got to take your corners different. Like, it's just incredible how many details are out there. Oh yeah, and then don't even get me started on the snowmobilers. They're like, oh yeah, you got the hard pack, you got the light hard pack, you got the kind of not hard but still hard pack, and yeah, it's pretty cool hearing all that stuff, impacts.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, and that's, the track and weather conditions play a big part. And, a lot of it has to do with where the sun is at in the sky. So if it's the beginning of the day and, say, the sun is touching one lane more than the other lane, that can make a huge difference on how you run. So there's just a lot of little stuff that add up together, and that's where it's helpful that my dad has been racing for almost 40 years, so we have all this data accumulated over time and all this information, so we're able to kind of just piggyback off that success and kind of my sister and I for us to create our own career, but it all has to do with his hard work and what he had to go through to get that information.
No, that's pretty interesting. I'm picturing your dad right now, like on the day of a race, going out to the track and like going to one side and like licking, his like rubbing his finger on the track and then licking it and be like, we're gonna take the other lane. I mean, is he kind of like that?
Yeah, kind of. Mm-hmm.
That's definitely what I'm picturing. Have you seen the movie Twister? Do you know the movie Twister?
No, I haven't.
Oh, okay. Well, we should probably just end this podcast now, and you should go watch this movie. In the movie Twister, it's like, these guys are trying to basically take measurements out of a tornado. But one of the main characters, it was Bill Pullman played the role. Either way, he's like this, he's been studying tornadoes for a million years, and he could like pick up the dirt and like shake it in his hands a little bit and look around and be like, I know which way the storm is headed. So that's how I'm picturing your dad, and I think I think that's probably pretty accurate too.
Yes, I think so.
Cool. Well, you gave me a lot of good info there for your background, and how you got into racing and stuff like that. Maybe bring us up to speed with how, the past couple years have been in how you've grown in your racing career.
Yeah, so as I said, my sister and I got started at the same time in 2004. And so we got started with a junior dragster. And when I got started, the minimum age was 8 years old. And so, like I said, she's 2 years younger, so I had to wait until she was 8 years old and I was 10 for us to get started, which I don't know if that's fair, but I had to wait. So I didn't really have a choice there. But no, it was great. But now they have lowered it to where you can start when you're 6 years old, which
really?
is pretty cool because you can see, like in motocross and go-karts, all these, you can start when you're 5 or 6 years old. So it's pretty cool to see lower the age range. So it's kind of just another aspect of little kids to, if they want to get started into racing, for them to kind of pick and choose what path they want to take. And so, yeah, I got started with the junior dragster, and they have different age classes based on it. And so they have a 6 to 7 year old class now, an 8 and 9, 10 to 12, and then 13 to 18. So and each class is limited to go a certain speed, and it starts out, you can only go like 50 miles an hour in eighth of a mile, and then it goes all the way up to the 13 to 18 year old group. They can go about 80 miles per hour in eighth of a mile. And so it's pretty cool because you can say you're a race car driver before you even have a driver's license. And so, exactly. So that's where we grew up racing, and our cousins did it. So we had family there, and we became really good friends with everyone who raced with. The track in Kansas City was only about 45 minutes away from us. So we'd go there. They would have test nights Wednesday and Friday nights. So we'd go there as much as we could and practice, and then get ready for the race that weekend. And it got a little tough for us because we'd have to wait until my parents were home racing. And so my dad was still racing full time, and there'd be times if my mom stayed home, she could take us to the track. And but you know what, we were still kind of limited to that. And so as soon as we turned 16, we would just take the dually and the trailer to the track ourselves and find one of our friends' parents to help us get the car started, and then we could do our burnout and stage and do everything on our own. And so it was really cool for us to kind of grow up like that, which I think is kind of one of the biggest things that sets us apart from other racers, is because we had to learn to do it on our own, and we had to work for it. And if we hurt something, we had to learn how to change parts or change a tire or whatever it was, because we didn't have someone there to hold our hand and do it for us. And so I'm really grateful for that. It was, racing junior dragsters was the funnest time I've ever had. And if I could do it over again, I would in a heartbeat. But you have to stop when you're 18. So the next class above that, there's about 10 different classes that you can choose from. But the most popular one is called Super Comp, which is where you race a dragster again. So it's going from a junior dragster that's about 12 foot long, and it's very narrow, very lightweight, to a Super Comp car where it has a full engine. I had a 567 Chevy motor in it with full transmission, everything. It had a rear wing on it, and the whole 9 yards. And it was about, I'd say about 18 foot long. Mm-hmm. And I don't have it anymore, so that's where I kind of have lost my stats a little bit on it. But so we both moved up to that class once we graduated from junior dragsters, and those cars go about 180 miles per hour in a quarter of a mile, which is from 7 to 8 seconds. And so it's a big jump for us. And I actually went to drag racing school. It's called Frank Hawley School. It's pretty popular in the NHRA, and they go to different tracks all over the country and host schools for people to get their license if they're serious about racing, or if they just want to drive a dragster for a day just to have fun, they can do that. So I went to the school and I got my license upgrade from the junior dragster to the Super Comp, and I raced that car for about 6 years. And my sister still races her Super Comp car. There's a drag strip that's close to her. It's about 10 minutes away. And so she goes there all the time. And a lot of our friends that we race juniors with also stepped up into the Super Comp class, or they stepped up into a door car class or something else similar. So we still stay in touch with a lot of them. And it's just great to kind of have that community that you can go back to every weekend. And so once I graduated from the Super Comp class, I moved up to Top Alcohol, which I race now. And so the Top Alcohol dragster is about 24 foot long. We have a 421 Hemi motor in it. Like I said, it runs on nitromethane. We have a centrifugal clutch, a huge rear wing on the back, got the front wing on it. It just screams powerful. And that car, like I said, goes about 280 in over 5 seconds. My personal record, I reset it at the beginning of this year. I went 5.15 seconds at 283 miles per hour, which is the record for the quickest and fastest female in all of Top Alcohol.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool.
Yeah. So it's great to kind of, have so much success that I've had in only my sophomore year of racing in this class. But like I said, it all has to do with my dad. And so he retired last year from driving, and so now he's just full-time crew chief and team owner. We run a 2-car team out of our trailer now, and that's 2 Top Alcohol dragsters. And like I said, my sister still has her Super Comp car. She lives about 2 hours away from us, so we don't see her all the time. She just graduated from school this year with a degree in mechanical engineering, and she works at this really great engineering firm. And so she's being a grown-up, doing her own thing, and it's awesome. We still get to race together sometimes. She has her Top Alcohol dragster license, so she can come and race with us whenever she wants to. And it's usually just the ones that are around the Kansas City area or down by Oklahoma.
Oh, that's really cool. It's very cool that you still keep in touch with, like you're saying, your older group that you used to hang out with, and that you and your sister still race, and that your dad was able to come on as your guys' crew chief, and still keep in the game and pass on that knowledge. So overall, it sounds awesome.
Yes, definitely. And kind of the ultimate goal for us was to have the Meyer sisters racing be a big name in Top Alcohol. But we have the 2 cars to do it, and but unfortunately, like I said, my sister is she's working full time, so she can't go and race full time with us, which is perfectly fine. She's doing what she loves, and she's really good at it. And a lot of that came from what we learned growing up in the juniors and super comp cars, and having to learn that work ethic, and just the basic skills that kind of go into engineering that you can get from racing. Mm-hmm. And so, there are times where we have both cars out there with my sister and I racing. And that's another reason why my dad retired, was so that she could kind of step up and fill his spot. But that didn't happen. And so we have about 5 other drivers that are on our team, and we all share the 2 cars. So I race a full schedule, which is about 17 races a year. I do all the Midwest and East Coast events, and our 5 other drivers only compete part-time or semi-full-time schedule, and so a lot of them are from all over the country. We have a guy who's from New York, a guy from California. We have a girl who's from Norway driving on our team, and so it's just really cool. And so it's just whatever's kind of in the region, or we'll just let them each pick and choose, so we can all share what races we want to do. And so that's what we're doing now as the 2017 season is closing, having them all pick what races they're going to go to into next year.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Very cool. Well, to kind of close out Heat 1, I would love to talk about some of your key experiences and accomplishments, things specifically that you feel like were high marks for your career. Outside of, we already know the 5.15 at 283 mile an hour.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I guess just starting off with junior dragsters, but I got 2 track championships with that car, and that was really great for me, because that was a big accomplishment, something that I always wanted to do, was to get a championship. And so I did it back to back, and I was able to do it in the 3rd year, which was going to be my final year racing juniors. And I had everything lined up for it, and we went to the last race of the year, and I just got in my head, and I got full of myself, and I went too fast. I went over our index, which makes you automatically disqualified. And so I lost first round, and it was completely my fault. And the guy that I was racing was the next person in line for points. And so he got the win, and he went a few more rounds. So he got ahead of me, and I was just, I was so disappointed to end. It was my last race of the year, my last junior race ever. And so, it's just kind of sad to end it like that. But look back, we've had so many wins between my sister and I with the juniors. It was just a blast. And like I said, I got 2 track championships with that. And then moving on to the Super Comp Dragster, I actually did not win a race with it, which is just kind of goes to show how competitive this class is. There's usually, when we go to a race, there's at least 100 different people just entered in the Super Comp class. And so it is one of the most popular classes there is, because it's a dragster. It's one of the only ones that is a dragster class. Most of them are all muscle cars. And, it's the fastest one out of all of them as well. So a lot of people want to race that class. So it's very quick. It's just the thousandth of a second you can lose by. And so I did make it to the final rounds a few times, but just ended up with second place, which is still, a great accomplishment to be able to take down some of those players and be able to make it that far. And then moving into the top alcohol class, we've had a very successful year this year and last year. Last year, I runnered up at the first race I had, which was a national event in Florida. It was our first race of the year. And then we went to about 5 different final rounds, and I won a race in Charlotte, North Carolina last year. And it was the first time that anybody on our team has ever won that race. So it was really special for us. And we've gone back there. We race there actually twice a year. We go back there every year, and I haven't been able to make it past second round, which the finals is fourth round. So, and a lot of it is just me getting in the way of myself. I either red light or my reaction time is too slow. And so I've just been causing problems for myself there. And I think a lot of that has to do kind of with ego. And so just, thinking I won this race, I need to win it again. But then I just cause more problems for myself. So I just need to relax and treat it like it's another race. But so going into this year, I finished up my season in October at Dallas. And we had a great year again. I won my first race this year. We were in Florida for what's called a regional race, and I won that. And I won 3 other regionals over the year and runner-up at my 5th one. And so I had a nearly perfect season for the regional side of it, which is there's 2 different series that we do. We do a regional series and then a national series. So for the regional, I got 4 wins and 1 runner-up out of 5 races. And then on the national side, I got 2 runner-ups and 1 win in Chicago. And so I did 15 races and went to the final round at 8 of them. So that's more than 50% success rate for us. And so that's just tremendous. And I'm excited going into 2018 to see if we can top that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's really cool. I'm always blown away too, just and how competitive drag racing can be, because I mean you get a couple of seconds for everything to go right, like everything. I mean, just some of the things you were talking about. You went over your speed once, or like your reaction time was a little off. I mean, we're talking. I mean, this is just such small measurements of time, and it's incredible. Like I know in some sports you have the opportunity you can crash and come back and win. And, or I don't know if your car is like this, but I know a lot of the cars that you have to rebuild the motor after every run. It's
that is something that we have to do. And for us, since we run on a schedule as Top Fuel, they have the live TV for it that they air on Fox Sports 1. And so when it comes to race day on Sunday, you're very limited between rounds, and you usually get only about 40 minutes between each run, and that's not enough time for us to get off the track. We have to make 2 stops before we come back to the trailer. We have to go over a scale to make sure we're over the minimum weight requirements, and then also go to a fuel station, and they check the percentage of nitro that we run. So like I said, we have 95% nitro. If we are 95.1 or higher, they can kick us out and we can lose the race. So there's 2 stops we have to make before we get back to the trailer. Have to get it on the jack stands, have to take, usually we'll blow it and spin it to get all the fuel out. So because we don't want an explosion to happen, because there can still be nitro in the motor. Blow it and spin it. Then we'll do a leak down test, take out the spark plugs, take the valve covers off, check the valve, drain the oil, put new oil in, put all new spark plugs in, change the clutch pack, put a new clutch pack in, put 5 gallons of fuel in every run, pack the parachutes, and cool the fuel down. And that's just the minimum that we have to do between rounds. If we hurt something, then we'll have to take a head off, which takes more time. We have to take the manifold off to do that. If we really hurt a part, like say we hurt the block, we'll just take the whole thing out and put a fresh new motor in, and that takes us about 40 minutes to do all that.
So all of that is more maintenance, I think, than I do on my 2 vehicles that I drive daily and my snowmobile and Razor in a year. So that's no, maybe multiple years, and you do it in less than 40 minutes. That's incredible.
Yes.
One thing that I want to call out that I think is kind of cool, and I think I even saw this in one of your the write-up in like Drag Illustrated or something. You say hurt the parts or hurt the car instead of like the parts the parts breaking, and it's almost like you have this emotional connection with the vehicle. Like I think that's pretty cool. I don't know if I've ever heard anybody say that before.
Yeah, and you know what? I don't think I've ever heard anybody kind of relate to it like that. Like, say it's an emotional connection, because I think that's just the lingo that we have around the drag racing world is you hurt apart. Um, yeah, I think that's just what everybody says, and if you hurt it, then you can't run it anymore. So yeah, that is kind of strange for both of us.
Well, and another way I was looking at it too is a lot of times we get feedback in this podcast from people saying like, you really want to be cautious of like saying that your part's broke, because there's a potential that someone sponsored that specific part, and are you going to make them look bad? And I almost feel like if you use the word hurt, it's saying like, well, it's not the part's fault, it was my fault. Like I hurt it, like
Yeah.
the part was being nice, and I just decided to hurt it, and I don't know. Maybe it came from that. Maybe not. I just think it's interesting.
Yeah, and for us, it's you can, like I said, so it'll be about an hour between each run, but the track conditions can change so much based on how many cars are going down the track, how much rubber they put down, if they scrape the rubber off. Like I said, the temperature, the humidity, the altitude, all of that changes, and so you have to change your tune-up every single time. And so sometimes you can go the wrong way, and then that's the reason why you hurt the motor or
Mm-hmm.
have a parts failure. And so yeah, it's not always the part's fault, but you just have to always keep in mind every little thing that's been happening so you can make the right tune-up calls.
Mm-hmm. No, I really like that. I really like that. Well, I also really like how Heat 1 went. We got some good info on your background, and we learned a lot about your story. So next thing I want to do though is move into Heat 2, but right before that, I want to take a quick minute to thank the sponsors for this podcast. I am constantly asking the guests of this podcast how they attract and retain sponsors, and on almost every single occasion, somebody gives an example of a resume. A rider or a racer resume is extremely important to your overall sponsorship pitch and proposal. And it's tough to do. I mean, it's not really the easiest thing. Anybody can go through and put together a resume, so don't get me wrong there, but it's really difficult to get something that's like unique and different and stands out, and that also is something that can be put across multiple platforms. Well, that's one of the things that I want to talk to you about next is how topthepodium.com can actually help you build a race or rider resume that can be used on multiple platforms. I'm talking like website, PDF, something you can print off that's interactive, that looks fantastic. It looks absolutely professional. Well, that's because it's made by a professional. This is the type of thing that's going to set you apart from the crowd, and that's going to position you for a strong sponsorship proposal. So what I want you to do next is go to topthepodium.com, and if you have a question, there's a little chat icon that pops up on the side of the screen when you go to topthepodium.com, and you can go ahead and type your question right there. Jeff Vanestal, he is the owner of Top the Podium. He's going to be able to respond to you directly, so check it out. I want you to think long and hard about this next question. Where do you think you should be spending your time at? Should it be on developing a sponsorship program, or should it be on cleaning the mud and dirt and filth and grime off your machine? I'm hoping that the answer you're thinking in your head is that you'd like to spend it on your sponsorship program. That's why you're listening to this podcast, and that's where you should be focusing your off-the-track time. But sometimes that mud and grime and whatever, it's there, and you got to get it off your machine, right? And that's actually why I want to talk to you next about Armor Coat, brought to you by Never Lift Racing Company. So Armor Coat products help prevent mud, clay, ice, all that other garbage stuff from sticking to your machine, and ultimately it ends up cutting your cleanup time in half. And I mean, your machine looks great. It leaves essentially a water-resistant shine, helps fight corrosion, and you can use it on like multiple surfaces. So it's ultimately fantastic. And really the purpose of this product, like I said before, is to make the racer's life easier. Now, if this at all intrigues you, I want you to check out Armor Coat at KoteProducts.com. Kote is spelled with a K. And when you get there, use promo code ARMOR10 to get 10% off the products. Have you ever been out on the trail or at the track or in the middle of the desert and something breaks? Well, of course you have. We've all been there. But a lot of people at that point, they reach into their trusty toolbox for the duct tape or the zip ties or wrenches to fix their machine. However, there's a feeling that you get when you realize you need more than just duct tape to fix that rock chip in your radiator. That's a horrible, horrible feeling to have. And that's why I'm going to tell you next about Solderweld's metal bonding products, specifically alloy sol. So this product gives you a longer-term fix than JB Weld, which is just going to get you back to the trailer or back to the pits. With basically the assistance of MAP gas or propane torch, you can quickly and easily repair an oil cooler, radiator, AC line, or any crack or hole in aluminum. And better yet, alloy soil flux is the only flux in industry that cleans and decontaminates the dirty and greasy surface for you. So you don't even have to worry about that part. The alloy sol rods are actually capable of a 30,000 psi fix, and they're stronger than even the parent metal, and they're built to last the lifetime of the part. So don't let a simple radiator leak leave you out of the race or broken down in the trail. Bring along some alloy sol aluminum alloy repair rod and flux from Solderweld. I hear it constantly from racers that a good suspension setup is absolutely critical for performance, and that's why I'm going to talk to you next about Bold Racing and suspension. Now, it's really critical to understand your suspension, and there's so many intricacies with the valving and the shims and all this crazy equipment that you need to actually, rebuild and properly set up your suspension, that it's really important if you're ready for that next level of performance to partner with an awesome suspension company. Now, Bold Racing is that company. They're not only specialists with their suspension setups, but they also partner with companies that produce amazing custom components. And on top of that, they're a family race team. They actually race themselves, so they really understand the type of beating that your vehicle and your shocks can take. So what I want you to do is give them a call and just chat with them. Talk to them about suspension. Their number is 702-506-5354. If you're not ready for a phone call, go ahead and shoot them an email, bold.racing@yahoo.com. All right, well, welcome back, everybody. We are now in Heat 2, and that's where we talk about some specifics with sponsorship tactics and strategies. So first off, though, Megan, I kind of want to understand who some of your current sponsors are.
Our biggest sponsor is Lucas Oil, which sponsors the whole series that we race in NHRA. So we have Lucas Oil and also have NGK Spark Plugs, which provide spark plugs for the whole year. And I think I've done the math. We go through about 1,500 spark plugs in a year.
Holy cow!
Yeah,
That
like I
is
said, we change them
wild.
every single time, and the 16 spark plugs every run. And so having a Lucas Oil and NGK as our sponsors helps out so much because we go through that stuff a lot. We also have Gunk Cleaner, which is supplies us with brake clean and also just any chemicals that we use just to clean the cars, just basically chemical stuff that we need. We also have a great sponsor called Technician Academy, which just joined on with us last year. And so they provide education for technicians after college. And so they really focus on working with manufacturers and providing training that technicians can do online courses and stuff like that, so that way they can stay certified and just stay up to date because, it's kind of hard for people to just go back to college just to learn kind of, the new technology that's coming in with cars. So that's their focus. And with that, we do a internship program with them where a college student can come and work on our car for a weekend. And so we did that for the first time this year, and it was a great turnout. The guy that we had some drag racing experience, so that helped out a lot. And he was an amazing helper. We made it to the final round, and came up short, got second place, but he had a lot of fun, and he brought his family out, and they absolutely loved it. So we're excited to do that again in 2018. We also have Clevite bearings that we use, and also their piston rings, which have done amazing job for us this year. We've been trying out some new products with them and have had a lot of success. We also have Meyer Truck Center, which is our main business, and so that's what we do when we're not racing. And basically, we just we work on tow trucks and wreckers. So we get the cabin chassis from manufacturers like Freightliner, and then we also get the beds that go, or beds or winches or whatever that towers want to use to build their tow trucks. So we get all that. We'll paint it, throw toolboxes on, light bars, winches, just anything they want. And so we don't do actually any towing of cars, but we're like a dealership for tow trucks.
Oh, very cool.
And then, we also have ARP fasteners. So we use their bolts and fasteners. And that's something that we, in the off season, will change every single nut and bolt on the car, even if it's not hurt. We'll still change it just to play it safe. And we also have, let me see, there is a lot of sponsors that we have.
Yeah, it's solid.
Yeah, and there's also, we work with RacePack, and so they have a program called Team RacePack, and I've been on that program for 3 years now. And so basically RacePack provides the dash that we use on the car and all the data loggers and sensors that we use. So there's probably about around 30 different sensors that's on the car. That we have one on the front of the car, so every time the front wheels come off the ground, it measures that. There's one on the rear wheels. There's one for on the exhaust and for fuel temperature and oil pressure. And so just anything you could think of, there's a sensor for it. And so that way, after we make a run and we get back to our pits, there's an SD card that we can download all that data onto, put it on the computer, and it pulls up a graph. And so we can see how everything went, if we lost a cylinder on the track. So that way we know exactly what happened and what went wrong before we tear apart the motor.
Wow, that's really cool.
That's kind of our main ones that we have. I don't think I missed any. But yeah, Lucas and NGK have been with us for about 10 years, so we've been able to build really great relationships with them. And also a new one that has joined on board with us is Weld Wheels. And Weld is based out of Kansas City, so it's kind of a great partnership for us and for me to be a brand ambassador for them now. And so I'm working with them to promote the drag racing line, but also kind of promote their off-road racing line. And since my boyfriend, he races dirt bikes and he has a side-by-side, so kind of getting into that world of racing. And so Weld owns a Hyper brand of wheels that goes on four-wheelers and side-by-side. So just learning about that and kind of helping them out as I go.
Well, you definitely came to the right podcast for getting some exposure to off-roaders and stuff like that. Definitely take a look back on some of our past guests. We got some pretty serious folks in the off-road world. So, well, one thing I got to go back and pull out of that, the spark plug thing, it blows my mind. I'm just thinking, like, to put this in perspective for people, right? 1,500 spark plugs that NGK gives you. Let's say it's $10 a spark plug, right? That's $15,000 worth of spark plugs for 10 years, right? You said 10 years?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's $150,000 in spark plugs.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's crazy. But the reason why I think that's important is you need to look at it from the NGK's perspective. They've invested a huge amount of money into your program, and they're expecting some return on investment, right? They're expecting exposure and things like that, and that's some high expectations, right?
Right, and they don't sponsor everybody out here, so yes, they look at your racing resume and your track record and see how well you've done over the years, and they really focus on your experience and your history. And so NGK is a great example of a sponsor like that, where they're not a contingency sponsor. They don't sponsor a lot of people that drag race. And they're also in other sports. I know they do a lot of boat racing. And so, yeah, so we're just very fortunate. And it all goes back to your relationship with them. And we've been able to build a great relationship with them because we've been doing this for a long time. And we also, we get to connect with family because it's a second generation team. People have watched my sister and I kind of grow up at the racetrack. And so that's why we've been able to have a lot of great sponsors that have stayed with us for such a long time, because we've gotten so close with them. And ones like Lucas and Gunk and Clevite, they're some of our closest friends, and we try and spend as much time with them as we can, and whenever they get to come out to the races. So it's just very personal for us. And you're right, to be able to kind of have that investment, they want something in return. So we can win races. We have great, we've set track records, and so we have a great report from the track, but also have great personal experiences with them as well. And so we do a lot of having them bring their top clients or their top salesmen to the races, and we have a hospitality area for them so they can hang out and watch us work on the car between rounds, and for them just to get out of the sun and have a spot to relax and just have some food and drinks for them and stuff like that. And so it's really important to, because I think a lot of people forget that they want something in return. It's not just putting a sticker on the car and then taking a picture of it and that's it.
Yeah, definitely. And then we're definitely going to dig more into some of those examples a little bit later. I want to dig into another one of your sponsors real quick because I think it's pretty interesting. And I guess I'm kind of curious how you all came to this agreement. But the Tech Academy in the internship program, that is really cool. I've never heard of anything like that before. Makes perfect sense, right? I mean, people who are watching NHRA, like, they're all gearheads, and they probably are looking for ways to better themselves and technically and build their own cars, and that's cool. So how the heck did that happen? How'd you get set up with that program?
Well, we've actually have known the people that have Technician Academy for a long time. They own an aftermarket agency that they do marketing and digital advertising for aftermarket companies. And so they have a lot of clients that is like U.S. Motor Works and Ray Bestis. And so a lot of big aftermarket companies, they do a lot of their advertising stuff. So, but they notice a lack of training from these companies for technicians. So that's where they started their own company called Technician Academy. And it's still new. This is only about their third year that it's been in existence. And so they came to the drag race and they saw us and we just immediately clicked. And it goes back to hospitality and treating them well and kind of going above and beyond expectations. And they just absolutely loved being at the track with us. And so we talked and came up with the idea of doing this internship. And they love it because they go to colleges and just to kind of introduce themselves to students. They go to about 6 different schools, and they're based about Indianapolis. So they go to a lot of schools that are in the Midwest that are close to us. And they're just telling students that there's an opportunity for them to continue their education after they graduate. So they already have exposure to students. So it's the perfect opportunity for one to get an internship to work on a dragster, whether they know about drag racing or not.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really cool. Like I said, I haven't heard of a program like that. I think it fits really nicely. It makes perfect sense. And I know there's obviously programs out there like that, but having them sponsor you is, I think, a good move on their part to get the right type of exposure. So very cool to hear that. So I kind of want to talk a little bit more about how you made connections with some of these folks. So you've given us already a few examples, but maybe with one or two of the other companies. I mean, how did you and your race team get connected with them initially?
Well, some of them we've been able to meet when we go to the SEMA show and the PRI show, and the PRI show focuses mostly on racing. I know there's a lot of drag racing stuff that goes into it. I honestly don't know how much other racing they do, but I know there's, parts manufacturers and stuff like that kind of crosses over. So I don't know if a whole lot of listeners go to the PRI show, but I'm sure everybody knows what the SEMA show is. And
Oh yeah.
I actually just got back from there last night, and it works out great because we were in Vegas the weekend before for a drag race, and so we just stay out there for the SEMA show. And so just kind of getting the first initial contact with them at these trade shows, and that's really the perfect place to meet everybody because a lot of them haven't been to a drag race before. So just introducing yourself and building a relationship. Don't just automatically go up to them and tell them that you have a race car and you want a sponsorship, because they'll just automatically say no. So the biggest thing is just building a relationship with them and, having something so they can remember you by. It's not based on your car, how fast you go, or what you drive. It's based on your first impression and how you had an emotional connection. And so just starting off there, that's the perfect way to start. And if it's the middle of the season and you're looking at a company that you're really interested in, shooting them an email or giving them a phone call is difficult because they won't always respond back. But again, it goes back to saying the right thing for the first contact. And so don't just immediately in the emails have the first paragraph be about your race car and that you need a sponsorship from them so you can keep racing. That's usually what I see a lot, and it turns people down because, they don't know anything about you and they just don't see the value. So it's important to just get that relationship and just build from there.
No, I think that's great. And we've gotten some recommendations on this podcast before, and maybe one thing I'd recommend to folks too is if you are reaching out to make contact, whether it's live, at a SEMA show or any sort of show, or if you're sending an email or whatever, start with some sort of maybe it's a compliment. Like you probably are attracted to this company for some reason, right? Maybe they got cool products or cool marketing campaigns or something like that. Just tell them that. Like, I really like the way you do X, Y, and Z. And that might be it. That might be it. You just say that. And then you step away from it, right? And then if they return your call, or if they respond to your email, or if they are interested in having a further conversation for face-to-face, then now you've started something. But I think that's a good way to get things going. I know if someone reaches out to me and says, hey, I really like what you're doing with this podcast, I'm like, oh, I kind of like you already. You're kind of somebody that I like now.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good kind of starter.
Yes, exactly. And some of the times I see that people reach out to companies and ask for sponsorship, and they know nothing about the company. They've never used their product before, but they see it on someone else's card, so they think that they're just going to sponsor everybody. So just make sure that you're educated and that you've used their products before, and the pros and cons about them, because nothing's perfect. So if you can kind of give them some feedback as to how they can make their products better, they're going to listen to you.
Yeah, that's definitely something we've talked about in here before, is that some sponsors are definitely looking for, whether it's R&D or specific feedback, like they want to know how they can make their products better. We talked about this on episode 26 of this podcast. It was with Jared Heshka of MBRP, and he said one of his campaigns for a new snowmobile exhaust, he was specifically sponsoring racers in snowcross just to get feedback on the exhaust. He wasn't trying to sell anything to anybody. He's like, just run it and then tell me how it helps or what we can change. And that's a pretty cool way of looking at it too.
Yeah, and that's how a lot of our sponsorships have started. Like I said earlier, we've been trying out some different styles of bearings and rings with Clevite, and a lot of it is just R&D and just saying, hey, this type of coating works or it doesn't work, or it makes it smoke more or less or whatever. And so that's just, it can help or hinder our performance, but we're willing to take that risk to improve our performance and to help them improve their products.
Definitely. Well, that's good stuff. I want to kind of change the subject a little bit here and talk about maybe a time when things didn't go that great with a sponsor. Because so far everything sounds like it's gone really well, and I want people to hear some of those not so great moments without talking about company names, but just give us some examples of that.
Yeah, I have a great example of that, to be honest. So I had a major sponsor for last year, which was my rookie year, and it was a new company that got started by a friend who was into drag racing. And so we had all these great ideas to work together, and I was putting them into place, and they were growing and everything was great. But then when it came to the point of getting funding back for all this work, then they just kind of disappeared. And I knew this friend was a little bit shady like that, but I thought it might be different this time. And it just kind of went sour and wouldn't return phone calls, wouldn't return emails, wouldn't talk in person, and it just went really bad and ended horribly. And to this day, still won't hear from him. And I wasn't the only person that this happened to. We had a whole team of us, and it was like that for everybody. And so it just kind of goes back to research and knowing who you're working with. And it was like I said, it was a startup, a new company. They had all these ideas, and so it just went for it. But I didn't realize the fact that there was really nothing in the budget for all of our work, and so they just got all this handed to them for free. And I don't check up on them. I don't know if they're as successful or what's going on, because I'm over it. I'm past that. I learned from my mistakes, and I don't care what they're doing now. But it's just, it was a risk that we took, and it was my rookie year. I was fresh to it. This person said they wanted to sponsor me, so I just immediately said yes, and didn't know what I was getting myself into.
That's good. So you've already given some lessons learned in that one, but one of the things that I wanted to pull out was you said like they were a little shady, right? You had this feeling, right?
Yes.
There's some little thing inside that said, I don't know about this person. And I feel like everybody listening, there's got to be a point in their life where they had that feeling about something. And they're like, well, logically, though, it makes sense, but this doesn't feel right. And then maybe it didn't really work out that well. I know I can think of examples of that. So that's maybe one of the takeaways is trust your gut sometimes.
Yes, and what we learned from that is to always have contracts and have a written agreement, because we didn't really have that. We just had a verbal agreement and talked over text and email and Facebook, which isn't the same as a contract. So every sponsor we have now, I make sure we have a contract, even if it's just for one race, because I want to make sure that we're safe, and that if we don't get what we worked for, then they need to do their part.
No, that's a very, very good point. And I think, people listening right now, if they're not doing contracts now and they're looking at taking on more and more risk, that may be something that they need to consider, because as your racing program or your riding program grows, you do start taking on some additional risk, and there's probably a certain point where you have to say, nope, we're going strictly contracts. I know a lot of people we interview on this show, they have full contracts, whether it's for factory rides or for whatever the program is, and they might be working on these, especially some of the bigger deals. They might be working on them for 6 months, maybe more than that, trying to get them really locked in. So.
Yeah, and it takes time, but it's definitely worth it. And you just, like I said, you want to make sure that you're safe. And it just helps you as a better team. It helps you be more professional, and it can, in return, you'll have a better rapport with this company and with those people, and they can, kind of spread the word that you're a professional and you're the real deal. So it can, kind of help you build more relationships with that.
Certainly. Well, next thing I want to do is talk a little bit about social media. I want to better understand your social media strategy and kind of where you focus on, in terms of what platforms you use.
Yeah, so I mostly use Instagram and Facebook for my social media. I have just my personal Instagram page, and then I have a racing Facebook page. I also have a Facebook page for Megan Meyer Racing, just to kind of cover all the different drivers and everything that's going on for the whole team. I have Twitter, which is Meyer Sisters, and so it just basically covers what my sister and I are doing. I don't use it a whole lot because I've just, to be honest, just never really got into Twitter. But it's a great place to just share articles and just click pictures with captions. I also use YouTube a little bit. I just have a GoPro camera, so whatever video I can take, I'll put it together and put some GoPro videos up there. I have a Meyer Sisters YouTube channel and then a Megan Meyer Racing YouTube channel.
Yeah, we get this feedback quite a bit on the podcast that Twitter is just not the go-to platform for off-road and racing. I mean, there's definitely some people that do well with Twitter that have been on this show before, but it is definitely the minority.
Yeah, and with Twitter, it's very personal, and so I don't feel like sharing my every thought that I have with people.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, there's a company that I follow called Andrew and Pete. They're just like marketing specialists, but they talk about Twitter a lot, and they say basically nothing's wrong with Twitter. It's just how you use Twitter that's wrong. So people who like to share many thoughts and lots of updates and things like that, they do well. And, people like me who use it poorly, will space content out and will just kind of like post once a day, and it doesn't produce the same results. So if you want to get better at Twitter, you probably shouldn't use it the same way that you use some of the other platforms. But for me, I just don't know if I want to get better at Twitter. Not sure yet.
Yeah. No, yeah, I agree with you.
One thing that I wanted to talk about with you, which I've been meaning to get a little bit deeper into for these podcasts, is Facebook Live. Now, or any live, really, but the reason why I specifically wanted to ask you about that is I saw a post on your Instagram where you had a little caption, like a little, overlaid text that said, "Join me, like, live at such and such a time." Is that something you do regularly?
Not regularly, but getting into it. The Facebook Live videos are great because it notifies people, your followers, that you went live, and so they'll automatically see it there. And everybody loves video, so for them to see you live, it's just a realer. That's not a word, but a better connection to get with them.
Realist.
Yeah. But yeah, you know what I mean. And so
Yeah.
Because if you're just putting up a picture, you probably didn't take it right at that moment and post it. You probably waited a day or two, or maybe a week or month.
Yep.
And so yeah, to do a live video, it's great because you can just connect with your fans more. And so that's something that I've trying to get into. It's hard to really do that during a race weekend because I'm busy in the pits doing my own thing, and I don't really have someone there to follow me around with a camera. But it was great to do at the SEMA show because I did our announcement with Technician Academy Live that we are doing our 2018 in the pits internship program. I also did another live feed video where I was at the NHRA Fox booth and just talked to him for a quick 15 minutes, and it was just like this, just a bunch of questions about the race season and going into next year. And so it was great to do that live. I know we had some problems with the sound of that because there was just so much other traffic going on. So that's one of the problems you run into doing a live video versus if you're recording yourself, you can do some editing and stuff like that. So you're just learning as I go. But yeah, so I think because Instagram you can do live videos, but it's just not the same, and it goes away. Whereas the live video, it's saved to your Facebook, so you can always go back to it and rewatch it.
It's something that I think is gonna become more and more popular, and I think people will utilize it more and more. Right? Facebook specifically puts a live video at a higher priority than other things. For example, you get a notification if someone goes live, and you get the opportunity to watch the replays. So I think it's pretty cool. I know that some people have solved the sound issue by, upgrading to whether it's a Bluetooth microphone or even a wired microphone to their phone, and that gives them a little bit better control over the sound. And there's lots of cool stuff out there that I'm just it's gonna blow up, and I think it's gonna continue to get easier, and the quality is gonna continue to improve as well.
Yeah, definitely. And even just devices to kind of hold your phone to even just so you can record a video, like a gimbal or a tripod, stuff like that's growing for mobile phones because it used to just only be for a camera, but now there's different accessories you can use to attach it to your phone. So yeah, everything's growing, and yeah, it's just getting better and better.
Perfect. Well, thanks for all that. That was a great overview of sponsorship. I'm going to go into the main event, but it's going to be a truncated version of the main event. And I'm really just going to ask you one question, and that's around an obstacle. So I'd like to understand what's a big obstacle has been in your motorsports career that you had to overcome.
You know what? I think the biggest thing is just trying to just grow myself as a brand, as a female racer, second generation racer, but kind of separating myself from my dad and have it be, I'm focused on Megan Meyer racing and not Randy Meyer racing. And I went to school for graphic design, and so with that I learned a lot about marketing and branding and just technology in general. And so I've been able to do a lot of the creative content myself and brand myself how I wanted to, and that's really helped out a lot. And with that I've been able to help other teams with their marketing and social media graphics and stuff like that, and just really kind of finding my niche in the racing world and how we can stand out as a team, and just so, again, sponsors can see us more. And I get a lot of compliments from our sponsors about how, they read all of our press releases because we're one of the only teams that stays in constant contact with them, because I do a pre-press release and post-press release. And, and just I do driver blogs on Drag Illustrated website, so just another way to kind of share my thoughts and just do an overview of the race weekend or month or whatever it is. And so it's just kind of finding what makes you different creatively. And so, like I said, having a graphic design background has helped out a lot. And also whenever we're doing proposals and contracts and stuff like that, having a design that separates us from the rest. And, it's all the same content. It's all about the demographics and, the advertising that they'll get. So what makes us different than someone else? And so just kind of learning how to establish myself as an individual and as someone that can provide value to that company. And it's not all because I'm a female racer. There's a few females that race in my class. I say about, for the whole nation, there's probably around 10 that's in my class, but there's about 60 different guys that we race with. So we're the minority, but it is growing for young people and for young females. But, we also have great experience on track. And so we're able to say that we can perform well and we can get more exposure, more TV time because of that. And so it's just a little of the, having a brand that makes you look good, having a car wrap and uniforms that look good and it looks professional. Also just having the track record. It's just, kind of just building that up over the years and branching off of it and going into different types of social media stuff, like doing Facebook Live videos or, anything like that, it's just, you have to learn how to separate yourself from your competition and how to make yourself look better and more professional and be more attractive and provide more value, because you're getting paid for your value. You're not getting paid because you have a race car and you can be on TV.
No, I think that was good stuff. And, that's a good point for us to kind of wrap up with, too, at the finish line. I think you kind of summarized actually a lot of the main points in that last statement, which is perfect. But one thing that we haven't talked about yet is, how do we connect with you? What's the best way? We've heard some of your websites, we've heard some of your social media. What's the best way to connect with you?
The best way would be either through Instagram or Facebook. I think Facebook would be better because Instagram sometimes blocks messages from people if you don't follow them or things like that. And so Facebook would be the best way, or email. Always checking my email, and my email address is info@randymeyerracing.com. And I am working on a new Megan Meyer Racing website, so that would have its own email address for that. But either Instagram, Facebook, or email. I check all of them daily, so that would just be the best way to contact me. Don't send me a message on Twitter because I probably won't see it.
Yeah, definitely. It's same with me. If you send me a message, no, I'm just lying. I will see it. But yeah, I'm gonna act like I won't see it because I really don't use Twitter that much. Well, cool. Megan, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us today and for being the first NHRA driver on this podcast. And at this point, I am going to leave you with this. Have fun and drive safe.
Thank you very much, Josh. I appreciate it and hope I can be back on.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Sponsored Rider Club podcast. Make sure that you subscribe so that you don't miss any of our upcoming shows, specifically our next one, which is going to be featuring Tucker Mertz and Kirk Zach of HMK USA. Beyond that, we have Walker Fowler of GNCC and Ron Patton of Stud Boy Traction. Beyond that, plenty more. Please head over to iTunes, leave a rating and review. I would really appreciate the feedback and support. Special thanks for this episode goes out to our sponsors, Neverlift Racing Company, who have the Armor Coat product line, Solderweld, Bold Racing and Suspension, and TopThePodium.com. Make sure that you're following us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. And one last thing I want to talk to you about is Impact Fuel. It's an online community aimed at turning your riding experiences into sponsor-funded charitable donations. By simply posting your mileage or podium on social media and tagging or mentioning Impact Fuel, you're creating a financial donation for Impact Fuel's featured charity for that month, and you don't have to actually give any money. To find out more, visit impactfuel.org or check it out on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. I look forward to serving you again next week. And until then, have fun and ride safe.